That's not. This is why. Right, I think we're ready with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Awesome. Yeah. Sarah's gonna be in the back someplace lurking.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll be up, but I was leaving a room and see Monterey was.
I think they're not in person.
Right.
I'll go back.
Yeah.
Feel free to get started.
Good morning, everyone. Is this working properly?
Can you hold down that button for me?
Yeah, hold the button.
It will turn on eventually. Try.
Check.
There you go.
For the record, that's the little button underneath. Great. There's the button. Excellent. Good morning, everyone. This is the November 19th, 2025 meeting of the Bigster's Byways organization, and we're going to call it to order here at 10 a.m. And the first thing that we're going to do is offer some instructions for anyone who may not be familiar with how to participate on Zoom. It's intended to be a two-way Zoom operation, assuming everything works correctly. I think Katie's going to give us that.
Yes, if you're participating on Zoom, you can dial in and press *6 to mute and unmute yourself. And if you're participating on Zoom itself, you can press the little microphone icon, and that will also unmute yourself. And you can raise your hand and I can promote you.
Great. Also, I want to just make a note that if you use the chat, we'll try to have somebody respond, but we can't always do it in real time because it's distracting. And the same with any other kind of online communication. We do our very best, but sometimes it's not possible to get there in time. So, that being the case, I'm going to go ahead and do the roll call. Katie, go ahead and do that as well, please.
Yes. Okay. Highlands resident, absent. Mid-Coast resident, Dan Perlstein. Big Sur proper, vacant. South Coast resident, Sarah Harvey. Let me see if she's online.
Yeah, we will be voting.
Sarah Harvey.
We have
Promote to panelist.
early.
And I just promoted her to panelist. Okay, Sarah Harvey.
Yes.
Resident at large, Martha Deal.
Here.
Caltrans, John Olenek.
Here.
U.S. Forest Service. California State Parks.
John Hiles, present.
Big Sur Chamber of Commerce.
Rick Baldinger, I'm here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Since we have a quorum, the next order of business is to vote to allow Sarah Harvey to attend remotely under whatever the AV number is that Katie's going to tell me here in a moment. In which she has to answer a couple of important questions. Rick says 2449.
Yes, Sarah, just to confirm, you're enacting AB 2449 to participate remotely today?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And you do not have anyone over the age of 18 in the room with you? Or under the age?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyway,
Yeah. Let's just make it easier. Okay.
that being the case, I'm going to ask the panel, is there anyone with any objection? Please say so now. Being none, I'm going to unanimously state that Sarah is attending remotely pursuant to the nameless regulation. All right. So this is, do we have any agenda additions, deletions, and corrections we want to share with everybody?
No.
No, and we do have, I think all of you found the materials that we had sent out online, also in the back of the room, if you need them. And so after that comes the time for public comment on items that are not on today's agenda, but which are relevant to the Byways organization. If you want to do that, and if so, Sarah's got a mic.
I can speak up.
No, you have to use the microphone for the Zoom meeting. Unfortunately, we can hear you, but we want.
Where is Mark? Mark is habitually absent from these meetings. He's halfway through or he's not here.
I have not heard from him, so I can't answer that. But yes, you're not, your information. we have.
You make sure Martha's speaking directly into the mic.
Good morning. My name is Marcus Foster. I'm a Big Sur resident. Couple things on my list here. One is the roadside camping. I don't know if everyone remembers that it became and still is quite a big issue. Cabs put in a lot of effort and volunteers patrolling from the county line all the way up to Carmel for months and months getting data collection. They were coming up with, 168 vehicles, roadside camping. I was on the fire department for a dozen years, going out on illegal fires and turnouts. We talk a lot about restrooms in Big Sur. I pick up trash, especially in my 1 mile radius where I live. And I see what gets left behind by roadside camping. A lot of the defecation and crapping and turnouts and toilet paper is due to people spending 12, 24 hours in the turnouts. I don't think there's been, it went through the supervisors, the county ordinance 3162 to increase the fine to $1,000. I want to know, has there been $1,000 fine written since that time? Because this past summer, there's so much camping, especially I'm in kind of a hot spot. There would be on the weekends, a dozen plus vehicles within a mile of my house, roadside camping. It's only going to get worse if we don't address this and do some enforcement, get the word out on social media. We got the campgrounds getting bought up by private corporations that are trying to convert into glamping sites. The price of the campsites has gone up tremendously at Riverside and Big Sur campground. So my point is, it's going to be harder and harder to find affordable camping options, and it's going to lead people to illegally camping and turnouts. I'd love to see a collaboration, sheriff, CHP, state parks, to really come into this next season, to really try to do some enforcement on that, whether it's 3 or 4 enforcement nights a year, just to kind of get the word out. But I think this issue is just been ignored completely, and it went through a whole process that really for what. Next thing on Bixby. I don't think Bixby's on the agenda today. But I did find out that all the cones, I guess, are not, county didn't put those out, Caltrans, they're all from private residents. And I'm just trying to figure out, is there a way to beautify a little bit that area? Because those cones, the K-rails now, all the mesh has come off it. Can we paint the K-rails brown? Can we put an island of brown K-rails at the entrance with a sign that when people enter that there's no parking on Gold Coast Road allowed with a fine underneath it? Because all the efforts really haven't really done much there from my point of view, unless there is an officer at Bixby. Everybody ignores the signs, so I don't know how we solve this problem, but every time I drive by there, it just seems like it's getting uglier and uglier and uglier with all the cones and crap. So can we put an effort to try to make that place not as ugly as it is?
Thanks, Marcus. Is there anybody else who wants to talk before we address that? Can I let Heather talk, who is actually going to be on the panel as of the 6th of December, by the way. So, okay,
I'm just gonna follow on with that because I'm curious. I believed that the entire highway from the Highlands through Big Sur was no camping. But there's the man with back porch, that's farming, right? But he's been at Monastery Beach for weeks and then he moves up.
He camps in the
South.
turnout. in that parking lot at Safeway, he comes out in the morning and then parks his RV. Yeah, so you actually.
Again,
He's not
without the
overnight.
microphone, there's no-
Okay, so, okay, apparently he's not there overnight, he's just there every time I drive past, so that was my question. But also just paying attention, I don't see many signs to let somebody know, and I know that there's that one in that deep pocket at Rocky Point, but I'm not sure actually if there are any still for that. I also noticed in the last couple of weeks, PHP or maybe state parks out at Point Lobos. Thank you, state parks, for ticketing people who are parking on the east side of the road at Point Lobos regularly. And it's been so good to see people getting tickets, and hopefully that message gets out on PHP. Marcus says he cleans up the stretch of highway around his driveway. I do some of that too, but there's so much garbage right now, and it is driving me crazy because of the winds and the rain in winter, and we all know where that's going straight into the ocean. So, I just wonder if we can have some kind of concerted effort a couple of times a year, and pre-winter being one of them, where we really just get out there in force and take some of this garbage off of the side of the highways because it ends up in the ocean. Thank you.
Good morning, Matt Harris, Mixer Fire. I'll speak on two things. One, since County Public Works has such a responsibility with Old Coast Road, Nascimento Road, and some of our South Coast Ridge roads, I'm wondering why they aren't part of this Byways organization. It might be advantageous. Along those lines, to answer your question, Marcus, I was talking with County Public Works about the sand pile. We kind of manage the sandbags and all that kind of stuff. And I just asked a question based on the last BSBO meeting about the K rails and the suggestion to paint them. And so I was talking to the chief of Public Works, and we may be able to do a collaboration where we can do the painting of them if they supply the paint, or some sort of collaboration. So just keep that in mind that may be coming down the road. Try and solve that, at least visualize sort of the K rails.
Thank you, Matt. Gosh. Anybody else before we? Braylon, somebody,
Oh, sorry.
everybody, don't forget to come.
Thank you. Just very briefly to the idea of regular cleanups on Fixer, I think it's fantastic and would suggest coastal cleanup days every September. So that could be, incorporated to coastal cleanup day.
Very cool. Anybody else before we're gonna go ahead and just briefly address some of these items. I wanted to let John have a chance to say if he had anything in particular to say. Oh, Katie says there's somebody online.
Yes.
Okay. Public comment online. Then we'll go back to addressing a few of these related.
Bruce,
Yeah,
yeah, there you go.
Hi, this is Bruce Merchant. I trust you can hear me okay. I
Yes.
am a master of asking crazy questions, but with regard to the parking problems that we have at Bixby, would it be possible to use a license plate camera, or maybe more than one, to enforce the parking on Old Coast Road?
Thanks, Bruce. Anybody else online, Katie?
I don't see any other hands raised online.
Right, thank you. I wanted
Oh.
to just,
Chief Dipple also raised his hand.
okay, yeah.
Promote to panelist.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Hey, I just wanted to jump on. I have to jump to another meeting at 11 in regards to the tragedy at Garrapata that we had over the weekend, which I'm sure you all heard of, which was horrible. But several staff members involved in that are meeting at 11. But I just wanted to answer a couple things that I heard come up from Marcus. We did just hire a new ranger that is going to be like district-wide patrol from John Little property all the way up into Monterey. So part of her duties are going to be to do these camp checks along the highway up the coast from basically the closure all the way up and kind of look for that, Marcus. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that. And whomever mentioned the Point Lobos Highway east side, yeah, we're working really closely with CHP on that, and we're in Caltrans and trying to make sure we keep that corridor safe. And thank you guys. I'll hang on for another 15 minutes and then I got to jump off, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, much appreciated. And I just want everybody to know that he is also the master of the cones on the east side at Point Lobos when the holiday weekends heat up. And I personally appreciate that a lot. So now I'm gonna go back, and Sarah, if we could get John, anything John might want to say about anything that you've heard here. I'm not gonna even limit you in any way.
Hi, everyone. This is John Harris, CHP, Resident Post Officer, and to address hopefully a few of the questions or concerns that got brought up. And if I missed anything, feel free to let me know. As far as what you'd asked, Marcus, if anybody had actually been issued a citation to $1,000 fine, and yes, I've actually done that myself. A lot of what I've done is, and that was pretty blatant, like egregious, where the person was just saying that they were homeless, that they fought it in the past with, I believe, with Santa Cruz County, and because they were without a home, that the judges up there did end up finding him, excuse me. So I don't know what Monterey County, the judges in the court did in reference to that specific incident, but he did receive a citation from me. Most of the folks that I contact on the highway, once I inform them, and I take a picture of their vehicle, that's usually enough to get them moving, but of course, it's always limited hours. You know, on the highway, I'm not out all night long, so when we had a deputy in Big Sur, a lot of times I would take those photographs, I would send them over to the deputy who worked a later shift than I did, and he would go through those areas secondary, usually I think around like midnight. If those folks were still there, then he would just go through the action, and I know that if Deputy Villasenor had actually issued citations for the information that I provided. So it's obviously a collaboration, like Chief Dibble said, and I'm sure we can do that with the new ranger that will be done at John Little to try to cover more of those hours. I think Chief Harris brought it up, and actually I think maybe Heather brought it up, but in reference to the signage on the highway, that was something that was brought up in another small committee meeting as far as the placement of those signs. Personally, I would like to see them a little closer to the highway if possible, if that was allowed by the state and the land use plan, coastal commission, everybody else that has to be able to, you know, check the box and say that that's appropriate. I would like to actually have a few more in specific locations. And I know sign pollution is always a concern within the community, but for the reasons that most of you have already mentioned, I think it's worth a few extra signs. I think that's a lot of the roadside camping issues off the top of my head. As far as Bixby and the parking and enforcement of it, yes, they're pretty much all the concerns that were brought up. When we're up there, I think it's quite efficient, but as soon as we leave, all it takes is one person to park on the dirt road and everybody follows suit, just like Point Lobos. Point Lobos is kind of its own beast because once one vehicle parks and everybody follows suit, they don't always necessarily know that those vehicles have got tickets. So you'll get 20, 30 cars on the northbound shoulder, and unless they're looking back at their vehicle or other vehicles, or they see a ranger or highway patrolman out there, they don't actually know that that vehicle got a ticket because now they're crossing the road going up to the park entrance. So a little tricky there, whereas when I pull up to Bixby Bridge or my coworker or any law enforcement pulls up there, usually with lights and ticket book in hand, the folks come scurrying back. They're usually back to their vehicle within a minute. I don't know how many, probably hundreds of citations I've issued up there, even with the current signage. So I don't have a good answer to that, to be honest. Yeah. The unified enforcement for campers or even Bixby or anything else here on the coast. That can be done, like agency can get with state parks. I believe the last time we did a larger scale one, we may have even had, Fish and Wildlife and Forest Service in the loop. So that just takes some phone calls. And I think the effort again, with everybody here, it's worthwhile to do a few times. It's just, some of these folks, much like the gentleman that has the trailer with the porch on the back of it, I've actually talked to him during daylight time. He knows the rules. And per the Monterey County ordinance, the gray area there is that if you look at the ordinance, it says that the vehicle is being used for sleeping. So some of these vehicles, I can contact them during daylight, hours, and they, if it's a Sprinter van, if it's something that I can't see inside, I don't know what they're doing inside. So I can knock on the door, and obviously if they wake up groggy, I can strongly admonish them that roadside camping is not permitted. But it's a little bit tricky from an enforcement standpoint to know whether or not these people are actually sleeping in their vehicles, or if they're just there, looking at the ocean and having a meal. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's kind of the thing where when we're looking at the overall picture of like doing the counts on the number of folks that are here on the highway and whether or not they're actually roadside camping or not, I can drive up and down the coast and see probably, I don't know, I can throw out numbers, but I can see a lot of people that are parked on the side of the road at, dusk because they're watching sunsets and they're having dinner and that sort of thing. And if you're collecting that data to say, hey, we've got hundreds of vehicles here on the coast that are roadside camping, that may not be accurate because those folks may leave 30 minutes later, an hour later. So they're numbers, and it's all important to collect, but until you actually contact them and find out, because another section in the county ordinance also talks about these folks if they're tired. And so if these folks know the law, they know the ordinance, they can easily say, hey, I stopped here because I was fatigued, didn't realize the highway was closed, and I have a couple hours. So, spirit of the law right there. I'm gonna try to give them the benefit of the doubt because I really don't want to have an accident, especially if that is the honest truth, but it could be another way that these folks are kind of gaming the system down here. Yeah, I think that's all that I've got for now, unless somebody else was asking something about holding the mic.
John, I really appreciate having you here. Anybody else from the public? Anybody online on the public? No, that being the case, I'm gonna close the public comment period about this, and now we've taken notes, and I think there's a good deal of good meat in there for us to discuss potentially later in the process. One more, Matt wants to do one more thing.
I have a good one to use.
Well, I think before you do one more thing, I want to just be clear to you that the Byways is about the highway.
Got it.
It's only about the highway.
Then I will withhold my comment.
I wondered if you might, not that you shouldn't make comments, but just, well, I want the record to reflect that Mark has arrived, so he's on the side.
Sorry about being late. Got lost.
Well, another good reason to have the meetings down here. Get lost on Highway 1.
Easy to miss that sign for the lot edge.
I
Then you go south of ways.
All
I
right,
saw the other day to get back.
very well. It's good for you to sit down here. We appreciate your time. I think the next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes of the September 24th, 2025 meeting, which came on the, came out with the agenda packet, and I think is also available on the back table. Are there any additions or corrections or comments about the minutes on the dais? Are there any in the room? Are there any on Zoom?
No.
Seeing none, I'm gonna bring it back to the panel. If, willing to approve the minutes,
So move.
Rick is so moved. Mark has seconded. Further discussion, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Let's see. Good, Sarah's online and has said aye as well. Anybody say no? Doesn't like it? None of those, so the minutes are approved. All right, that gets us down to the main events. And the first thing we have to do is mostly procedural, but we want to have a small discussion around it, and that is to adopt the regular quarterly meeting schedule. And I'm gonna editorialize by saying that everyone should just keep in mind that we are only funded for 4 meetings a year. We do 1 a quarter, and these are the dates that we are suggesting after looking at all the other things that are going on. And we would also be interested if people would care to weigh in on whether the lodge or the fire station is preferable. We're trying this time, and we can actually wait until the end of the meeting and you see how it goes here, but we do want to get some feedback at some point about which of these venues would be preferable, particularly if you had strong feelings one way or the other. So you can just get to me or Katie or John or anybody see us here if we don't have another opportunity. So that being the case, does anybody want to talk about the dates suggested here? Mark.
I'm sorry, so is this about the meeting place?
You could say something.
So my preference on the meeting place is, if we can alternate, between the fire station and here, that'd be fine.
Regarding the meeting plan, as far as the dates go, the dates don't work for me on the calendar. And as far as the meeting place go, of course, our desire is to get as many people here as possible. So we have a nice group here today. The fire station in Carmel Highlands is comfortable as well. It has a little bit of an instability issue related to the internet. So far so good here at the lodge. We appreciate them for that. We appreciate Katie getting us together as well. So like my desire is we want to do our best, whatever is going to be the most successful to bring people out. On the agenda today is the Coast Highway Management Plan. It's a very big endeavor, and we hope to use the byways as a pivotal piece of the development of that plan. And so that's my 2 cents. My hope is that if we stay here or if we go back to the Highlands, it's more about just making sure we have enough participation possible.
Thank you. And I would just add, as I said earlier, I like having people have to drive on the road. I think that there are people who come in just to the Highlands and don't get any more of the byway than from the bridge to the fire station. So from my point of view, I prefer this for that particular reason. Kate,
And I just wanted to also flag that
I think you're not on.
Get your mic. Wait, it's on.
okay. I just also wanted to flag that the Carmel Highlands Fire District said that they will be updating their internet services, so they are getting new Wi-Fi there. So just to bring some kind of peace of mind to folks.
So don't let that back. Part of the reason is we wanted to make sure, we wanted to have stable Wi-Fi for this meeting, which is why we suggested this location. So that was one of the, don't necessarily let the technology issue now factor into your decision.
Thanks. All right, is there anybody in the room that would like to comment on the dates? Not seeing any mad rush. Anybody online want to talk about the dates? Including Sarah, that I didn't actually look at before, but she's nodding her head no, I think.
No, they look
okay.
good to me.
All right, good. That being the case, I'm gonna bring it back to the dais. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, does anybody want to move to approve these dates for our next year's regularly scheduled meetings?
Don't move.
So Rich was moved, and that was, John, so Mark. Mark is seconded, and John let it try. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. And those are adopted. Great, thank you. The next item is the chloride extraction project at the Rocky Creek Bridge came up at the BSBO as a concern, and I wanted to put it on the agenda so we recognize that that has been raised, and I'm going to hand it over to John here, who's going to talk a little bit about chloride extraction, and I will talk about the schedule for all the bridges in the church. John?
Thank you. So at Rocky Creek Bridge, we've been talking about this at all the BSBO lately. I brought it up here several times at Byways. At Rocky Creek is our next project for its electrochemical chloride extraction, or we would like to call it ECE, although it's not an easy project. Basically, the The bridge, it's a bridge preservation project. It extends the life of the bridge, these historic bridges, so that we can keep them operating longer. And in short, the process is there's scaffolding that's constructed, and the bridge itself with the contractor, they extract the corrosive materials out of the metal that helps, again, keep the concrete and the metal intact as much as possible. So as we've been announcing for a while, that project at Rocky Creek will begin somewhere after the first of the year. We have a contractor on board, and just the details are being finalized for that. When we took the signal, covered the signal and took the signal out for the Rocky Creek Viaduct, we had a lot of questions, like why are the posts still there? And one of the answers was because when the ECE projects, we're gonna bring those signals back up. So something we've also been announcing is to take note of when the project starts, we'll be going down to a one-lane traffic control over Rocky Creek related to the bridge. Just might mention that this is not a new effort or process. We've done several bridges already. To be honest, I'm not sure which ones are at Rocky Creek, but we have done several up to this point. So what you've seen where the one lane is taken so that there can be construction staging. There's sometimes weight considerations that they take into account when they bring it down in one lane. So it's a really important project. These bridges are very important, and this is a process that we've taken. And we're going to continue to take it all of our bridges so as to keep the bridges open and operable as much as possible.
Thank you, John. I would say that I know we've done this at Granite and at El Paso previously, and most of you here may remember the traffic control, particularly Granite. My question is there a forward-looking schedule? Because of course, it's going to come, next one comes south of Bixby. And we want to certainly be able to plan ahead on how that might eventuate. And then what other bridges are you going to be doing going south?
So I don't know if Bixby's next, but I can take it as an action to check in with our project development team. And if there is a schedule, bring that back, for the minutes for the team. I might also for the notes. I might also mention that for Rocky Creek, right now we're developing a project website, and I just keep the public up to date, and we'll continue to mention it here at Byways and mention it this time.
Thank you. I think that a long-term schedule will be really handy. All right. Thank you, John. Are there other comments on this from the panel? Dan? You can get Sarah's mic. She's closer.
Yeah, it's questions really.
Okay, you're good.
It's still questions really. As an uninformed person on this, it would have been great, it seems to me, if we could have done a bridge while there was less traffic on the road due to the slide. So we're doing this pretty much right when the road opened. And my questions are, I guess, couple-fold. Is there wiggle room in this long-term schedule that we can weigh in on? Is it possible to do more than one bridge at the same time or not? Just more information would be helpful on where we have where we can make input and what the parameters of that input are.
I suppose just a brief response is there likely is very much a schedule, which I'll get more information on future bridges. But this project, the Rocky Creek, has been under development even during the course of the viaduct and the slip out and the seawall below. It's been under development, and so it is, the timing is a little close to that. But the way that our funding cycles work with the transportation dollars, it's really important that we keep to our schedule, and we have our contractor. And maybe you've read in the news and seen in general that state transportation dollars are in a decline as well. So keeping to our schedule for our program projects is very important. Our commitment is to keep the public informed. So I'll continue to do that through our teams, through our social media, through our public information, press releases at meetings like this. So keeping the schedule is very important, particularly in these times where funding seems to continue to be getting tighter and tighter. So the project will have to keep the schedule to be successful. There would be no guarantee that it'll be able to have a future funding allowance to it. So keeping it going down is important.
Thank you, John. Rich?
Just to follow up, John, when you research the future schedule, just to be clear, I don't know if we're talking about at Rocky Creek or additional bridges, but ultimately to know how many are left. And is this over, an 8-year period, a 28-year period that Caltrans plans on doing this? And And if there's again, an opportunity stated for the community to weigh in as far as the strategy on closures and the timing and number of bridges done at the same time. That'd be great.
Thanks, and I would, with that report, if we could just get the specifics of the previous ones that have been done in Big Sur, that would be handy as well. Anybody else on the dais? Seeing nobody, is anybody in the audience wants to talk about that? Heather? Sarah has another step.
Yes. Hi, Heather Lanier. When the Pfeiffer Canyon Bridge was down, I was helping facilitate Caltrans people coming into Big Sur to look at other bridges because there was a lot of concern about the age of the bridges and well-being of the bridges once one started to crack. So I'm just also wondering, how many years do you think you buy, so to speak, from this particular process? I'm just so curious because when I visited all the bridges south of Pfeiffer Canyon Bridge with these two men, and they basically told me, well, all of these bridges have come to the end of their lifespan, and that's just a natural, normal thing being close to the ocean. So hearing that was a little scary as a lifelong resident of Big Sur, but I love that there is a process that the whole bridge doesn't have to come down and be rebuilt, and I'm just curious, how many years you think this buys a bridge?
Hi, so my name is Heidi Ryder, and I'm with Caltrans as well, and it usually lasts anywhere 10 to 20. I mean, it really does depend on how much of the salt water intrusion, how much of that you get. Some bridges can be shorter, like the bridges out on the coast and Scott Creek and whatnot, and Santa Cruz, which they have constant wave action on the bridge, and so it just kind of depends. But what we've been told with a lot of these ECEs, they can be maintained to some degree in perpetuity, as long as there aren't other structural issues associated with it. So those bridge inspections, they go out and they look at a lot of different things and they come up with what a long-term maintenance strategy is going to be. Part of what we're doing, kind of looking forward as well, is we're looking at the vulnerability of all of our bridges. So we did a vulnerability study a couple of years back. We're updating that study, and we're going to talk about some of those things and which bridges, kind of the ranking of those bridges as far as it relates to coastal resiliency. So that's something that we are working on, but we can certainly get kind of a schedule of the ones that have already kind of are in that poor to fair condition, and what that plan looks like to kind of move things forward over time. So we do have kind of our 10-year shop that looks out into the future of what those projects would be, and certainly John and his team can kind of pull some of that information right now.
Laura? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't say Marcus's hand. That's all I mentioned.
Well, in along, the theme of like to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. There's a connection, I think, between this and the discussion of transit that's on the agenda. I think the way this can also be utilized is in a way to remember and emphasize the fragility of the road. And it also sounds as if, and I remember this from the BSBO meeting as well, that there are going to be a series of single lane managements over the next several years as we go from bridge to bridge to bridge. So we need public transportation managing tourism on this road. And this is just another reason why getting more people and fewer vehicles. And so I just want to harp on that.
Thank you, Laura. You'll notice that one of the items on our agenda is to discuss a meeting that is.
Right, that's why I said it.
So, yeah, we see if there's any place there. And I would also just continue to say, and it doesn't seem to seep into the discussion foundationally, but we have had this at bridges already in Big Sur, I think three, I think one of the southern bridges as well. So this is not new. We have been having this happen. So we know what it looks like. We just want to know now, looking forward, is what I'm asking for. But I'm trying to address the comments I personally received about this being a surprise. Why didn't anybody tell us? We've never had anything like this before, when that in fact is not the case. So coming to the defense of my friends at Caltrans over here, that in fact it is not new and different. Marcus, would you like to talk?
Yeah, Marcus Foster, two questions. One, I imagine this is gonna be daytime work. Is there a way to keep two lanes open once the, daytime work is done, so that we can have a little bit less of an impact of a single lane? And two, from my understanding, this can probably be a, close to 2-year project. Is there a way to also incorporate restoring the bridge rails at the same time so that we don't finish this project and then get into more single lanes to restore the bridge rails that need to be done? Is that a possibility to collaborate and do both at the same time?
To the second comment regarding the bridge rails, Rocky Creek it's not, the two projects are out of sync. And as we brought up before, we actually have discussed and we found the potential of a new bridge rail option. I was going to cover that in roundtable at the end just briefly. But, sorry, what was the first part of the question?
First part was, is there a way to keep two lanes open
two
after
lanes,
the
right.
like?
Unfortunately not, because as you maybe remember, I think Garapata was the last bridge we worked on, is the equipment staging and what it needs to reside on the lane. So there's activity on scaffolding over the side of the bridge, so you really don't see a lot of action, but what is there is the equipment that needs a stage on the bridge. So the work it's a daytime work when there's that kind of activity going, but they usually reside on one half of the bridge. But the question, thank you.
Thank you, and as we discuss this going forward, we can always discuss how to keep the traffic flowing as best we can. Anybody else here? Mark?
Question for Calvin, just out of curiosity, now that we're on the topic of the lifespan of bridges, what is the end of life prediction for this city, and what would happen as we approach that end of life?
Just keeping it short, I know, but in the process, we do have a regular program of bridge health inspections. And so in the process of maybe getting the schedule for the next bridge coming up, maybe that'll kind of be part of the bridge too.
It gets rebuilt, make it very ugly.
I like this. I don't know that we have a huge constituency for ugly, but Mark is. There's nobody else, there's anybody on Zoom who would like to comment on this map? No?
No.
He's shaking her head, double checking Sarah, no? I don't see her, but she would have her hand up. All right.
No comment.
Nope, okay. That being the case, I'm gonna go ahead and move along from that item. Thank you, John, for helping us address that in our ongoing goal of following up on in more detail on items that were discussed briefly in BSBO, just as an administrative thing. And I'm gonna go ahead and move to the main focus of this meeting, which is the introduction to the Coast Highway Management Plan update. Why we have been graced with Brandy's presence as well as John's today. So I'm just gonna take the opportunity of having the microphone in my hand to make a brief pitch for anybody here who has not become familiar with the Coast Highway Management Plan. It is posted on the Byways website. It is the foundation of what this particular body is supposed to do, which is to help to implement the Coast Highway Management Plan. It is circa 2004. It has received the highest level of implementation of anything could happen for a corridor management plan. And it was a result of an almost unprecedented collaboration among all kinds of stakeholders here. I always show the page, I don't think you can see it online, of all the signatories from the steering committee, and they go from, at that time, the director, District 5 director, but also Sam Farr and Charles Lester and Bruce McPherson, I believe, was on there. Everyone in elected and agency adjacent positions was part of it, along with a robust community involvement. And all those people, with the exception of the then Coast Property Owners Association, all agreed that this was a workable document that should be our, I guess, the expectation of how Caltrans is going to manage the highway, given all the constrictions of resource constraints and the ever important and very difficult and completely unique Big Sur land use plan. So this is the foundation of everything we do here. This update process, I think, was intended to be iterative, but we haven't had the opportunity. We really look forward to hearing from John and particularly Brandy about setting the stage for how this update is going to take place. And that's what we're here today to do. That's
Right on up.
Great. Thank you so much for having me here today. And I just wanted to introduce myself. So my name is Brandy Ryder. I'm the Deputy District Director over our Transportation Planning Division here in District 5. I've been with Caltrans in District 5 for 26 years. And so I have a real love for the Central Coast and in particular the Big Sur Coast. I started out my career as a field biologist working up and down the Big Sur Coast. So it's fun to be back. And I was early on, was helping out with the Coast Highway Management Plan as a student assistant, working with GIS and a lot of the other things. And so it's fun to kind of come back full circle in my career and come back to this plan effort. So I wanted to, like Martha said, it's 20 years in the making for this update. This has been a really amazing plan as far as really guiding the way Caltrans does business on the highway. And so one of the things that we did was the previous planning effort was funded through a federal grant, and we were very fortunate to convince the feds before the administration changed to secure protect funding on the highway, and so that we could do this update with a kind of this kickoff period that we're having right now. So we have been doing a little bit of background data collecting in the background for the last couple months. But really what we've been working on over the summer and the early part of the fall is securing those dollars so that we could kick this effort off. It's going to help fund not only staff time at Caltrans, but also potential consultant contracts should we need to have specific data that we need to collect along the coastline. So one of the things about the corridor management plan is, we looked at corridor aesthetics, we've had landslide management, storm damage response, vegetation management. There was a lot of aspects to the Big Sur Coast Highway Management Plan. But I think that as time has progressed and plans have changed and policy has changed, not only at the county, but at Caltrans, it's time to refresh. And so it's an opportunity for us to take a look at a lot of those design guidelines that were put in the Coast Highway Management Plan, look for opportunities for consistency between a lot of the local and other state planning efforts. And so that's something that we're going to be working on with the update. So one of the things that we'd also like to do is make sure that we have alignment with our current state strategic goals. In particular, some of the items that weren't really put into the Coast Highway Management Plan last go around was equity, climate resiliency, more of a conversation about prosperity. There isn't so much with employee excellence, that's more of a Caltrans thing. But those kind of weaving some of those items into the highway management plan. So it's going to require a lot of collaboration on what the vision of the plan is. That's where this group is going to be really essential, and we want to engage with the stakeholders and the community, and in particular, and Martha kind of alluded to it, there was a steering committee as well as a working group. And so reestablishing that working group that can guide the update to the plan. And then when we go out to the public, we would certainly go out, at key milestones to let them know our progress, gain additional comments, make sure that the community feels really engaged. I think one of the beauties of the Coast Highway Management Plan from the previous effort is we broke up the coastline into our community groups. The Big Sur Coast is a very long, as you know, very broad, different types of communities, different types of issues within the Big Sur Coast. So making sure that we're really kind of addressing all of those groups and engaging with them. So there's going to be a concerted effort to do that work. Climate resiliency, we're all well aware of what's happening with storm damage along the coastline and how we're going to address that in this plan. Like I mentioned, we're working on our update to our vulnerability study. The last vulnerability study we did was in 2020, and it identified particularly bridges, drainage features. It didn't go so much into landslides as we had hoped that it would, but we certainly want to do a little bit more work in that realm for this update. Economic impacts, we've had a lot of interest about externally, from the governor's office all the way down to all of our local businesses on how road closures impact the Big Sur coast. And so probably spending some more time really looking at what can be done, what kind of policies we can put in place to kind of alleviate some of those concerns. We have a lot of issues with fire, emergency response, evacuation routes, limited access during an emergency situation. This community kind of rallies together really well when there is an emergency, but maybe putting some policies in place that we, how Caltrans communicates, how we work together with you. In particular, one of the areas we've been interested in is when we have an emergency and we need to get into emergency permitting and what that looks like as we're going through. So one of the groups that we're interested in pulling together is a group of the resource agencies to start developing some emergency response guidelines, in particular for when we have to deal with the permitting side of the house and how we're going to deal with that. And so that is something new that we want to add into this effort. Certainly, I talked about other planning efforts. There's been a lot of planning done on the Big Sur coast. So we want to make sure we're not getting into a situation where anything that we're putting in our guidelines is like totally inconsistent or a fatal flaw for other planning efforts. So working a little bit more in a coordinated effort and collaborating with Monterey County and state parks to really make sure that we're not creating problems for one another. So looking ahead, we want to assemble a group. So we're going to have our own internal team. Obviously, Caltrans is a really large organization, and we have all of our functional units and expertise. The same goes for our external. I talked about this working group, and so we kind of want to talk about the structure, who's going to be on that working group. We would like to make sure that we have a scope of work that people feel pretty comfortable with as we move forward. And so that's something that this working group is going to be working on. To get the funding, we had to put a scope of work together and kind of start to establish. We based it off of the previous effort and added in some scope that we thought would address the update. However, not everything is set in stone. And so we want some collaboration on making sure that that scope of work is dialed in, and then defining who's going to do the work. Are we going to go out and get, contracts consultants to do some of the work? Is it going to be done in-house? Or are we going to collaborate with other agencies? So we've been working on some baseline data in the background, like I mentioned. Primarily, we have a lot of new staff at Caltrans that are super young, super excited about this, but they don't know the history. So we're spending a lot of time kind of getting them up to speed. And then establishing kind of that advisory committee. The Byways was somewhat born out of the Coast Highway Management Plan. And so this is already an advisory body, but it's also having a technical group that can kind of dig into the technical stuff. It wouldn't necessarily be a Brown Act group, but it would certainly be a group that would help advise the process as we go through. So what's next? One of the things that we would like to do is put together a survey. Some of the questions that we want to have, like what's missing, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and then what are the expectations of this update? Different agencies, different stakeholders are going to have a different perspective of the Coast Highway Management Plan, as well as what they would expect the update to look like. So we're going to be working with our team to set up a website. John had mentioned that there's, our project website. We're going to set something up internally so that we have a forum where we can share information on this update so that folks can get in, take surveys and that sort of thing. We want to work with you all on who the membership is, those groups that I previously talked about. And then kind of making sure that we're identifying any gaps to the update. So, and those conflicts in policy. So there's going to be a lot of that work going on in the next several months. We're going to be working with, hopefully with the Byways to work on things like goals and vision and kind of expectations. And then, and so that's really what I wanted to bring forward today. I wanted to have an opportunity to hear from you all. I think that Martha's been involved for a very long time with the Coast Highway Management Plan. There are other staff here and individuals that have had different relationships with it. So just hearing from you guys on kind of what your expectations are, I think is going to help guide us as we pull people together. And we really just wanted this to be a discussion. So I wanted to give a broad overview of kind of where we are with the update. We are bringing a new staff person on. They're going to be our corridor manager for the Big Sur Coast. He's starting on December 1st, and he's going to be our staff lead that you guys will get to engage with along with John. And so we're excited about him coming on board. We're going to bring him up here and introduce him to folks in the coming months. And so with that, I'm just going to kind of close out my presentation and then open it up to questions.
Thank you, Brandy. Much appreciated. And I'm so thrilled to have come forward and to have this forum to at least begin a conversation. I would just, before we go general, as most of you in the room know, I'm part of the ad hoc committee from the Monterey County Planning Commission that's working on the next draft of the Big Sur Coast Land Use Plan. And the Big Sur Coast Land Use Plan is absolutely a related effort here, because the Big Sur Coast Land Use Plan is the vision statement that we go back to. It's the prime document that talks about coastal act and how it's going to be implemented here. And so it's just a draft, and we've just gotten as far as we've gotten after 15 years. But I can say that based on the input we have received on the previous drafts, this new draft of the coastal plan, I got too many initials in my head, of the LCP, is going to contain the fewest possible number of changes to the existing plan. So our overriding goal has been to try to change the existing LUP as little as possible, just where necessary to address changed conditions. And so that, I think, is important to say right now, because we heard from Brandy a suggestion that had been a lot of policy change, and I'm here to say that even looking forward, I would not anticipate that at the LCP level in the upcoming changes at this time. So that being the case, anybody on the panel want to talk? Rick, go ahead.
Thanks. Thanks, Brandy. So can I get some clarification on the makeup of the working group versus the advisory committee? Was that one and the same, interchangeable, those two different groups? And how are the members of those groups, that group or those groups, chosen? Oh, I'm sorry, and also the timing on putting those groups together.
Okay, great. No, those are good questions. So we have the lists from our last two groups and so let me come back. So the advisory group, I believe kind of became the Byways. I don't remember. So I know that the Byways, so the advisory group could be the Byways. That's something that could happen. But the working group is intended to be kind of technical specialists from various agencies. And then we would probably have representation from some of the other communities as well. And so we do have a list of what the original working group, steering committee, advisory group were set up. We would like to kind of take those lists, take those organizations and confirm with this group as a whole, in particular the Byways, like, is that still the appropriate group and structure? We don't necessarily want to reinvent the wheel. That process worked really well with the last Coast Highway Management Plan, but maybe there's some tweaking that we need to do. Maybe there was somebody that was left off the list that thinking now that we really probably should add them in one of those capacities or all three. And so the steering committee usually is at more an executive level, like if we end up getting into issues with like, I think that what Mark showed with the signature page was an agreement. And one of the things that we talked about was putting together a charter, and that charter would define the roles and responsibilities of each group. So, sometimes you have like an executive steering committee that should there be like conflict management or anything that goes on in kind of a large scale analysis group like this, and it would have representation from Caltrans and the county and state parks and those types of organizational groups that can help guide a process. And then your advisory and your working group would have other roles. And so we just need to define that. And I can't remember if there was a charter previously or an MOU that was set up, but that's something that we've been doing on some of our larger planning efforts, is establishing a charter so that we define those roles and responsibilities so that people know like time commitments, frequency of meeting, and what each group is intended to do. So that's something we'll be working on as well.
I take away from that to be determined. My question is there any possibility for Caltrans to help support this group so that we can be more involved than one supporter? Because we have, that's all of our funding that we have for administrative support, is to have a meeting once a quarter for 2 hours. And so there are a lot of things, as you heard, that come up. Is there any possibility that Caltrans could help us convene this body more frequently to address some of the issues we got?
So that's something that I'm looking into right now with the Protect dollars. If there's a set aside that we can do like an interagency agreement, it would end up being a contract between either, it might be easier for us to work like through AMBAG and then have AMBAG help pass through dollars. Because we do have like master fund agreements already with AMBAG and TAMC, which are our 2 like larger transportation agencies here. And so we may be able to do something where we can pass through dollars and have a contract written up that pays for things like staff time and those types of things. So that's something I'm looking into right now, if that's something we can use these dollars for.
That'd be great. Katie, you had something?
Yeah, we have,
Yeah,
well,
We were just waiting for, we have a hand up on Zoom, but I know we're having discussion of the panel first.
Pat, we'll go to the Zoom after we go to the house, and then we can start with the panel. So.
Yes, John Miles, State Parks. State Parks is really excited to work with you on this endeavor. We have over 9 park units that border Highway 1 with multiple entry points. And looking forward to working on everything from invasive plant management to coastal access to choke points and congestion that we all experience within the highway corridor. So we're looking forward to being part of that team. Thank you.
My own comment is that the plan looks good. I mean, very flexible, very open to input, and so looking forward to being part of the community that helps.
Okay, we're good.
So one thing I didn't mention as part of this effort, one of the requirements that the governor's office wanted us to take a look at and is some corridor scenario planning. So there's going to be some system level planning work that's going to be done that's hopefully going to take into account things like we talked about, like the parkit and TDM, like the travel demand side of the house, parking, those types of things, from a transportation management side of the house. And the reason is that, you know, we've been asked multiple times, like the highway keeps having these slides, you know, what are you gonna do? Should you realign the highway into inland? And so we get these really big questions. And so we need to kind of just have a conversation about the practicality of like a major roadway realignment. You know, that's pretty impossible to do, and it doesn't necessarily take away the fact from our landslide activity. We're just going to move it to another range of mountains, which also are highly erodible. And so So, but we do need to have a conversation about some of the scenario planning. And the way that we're kind of looking at a lot of this is, you know, it's maintaining in place. Is really what our focus is gonna be, but there is gonna be an aspect of this that's gonna look at it from a, you know, long-term system approach as well. And I'm hoping that things like we talked about transit, we're talking about complete streets, we're talking about a lot of those things, parking, signage, we'll be able to get into some of that kind of more technical side of the house as well.
Thanks. Okay, I'm gonna launch off into my own world here. The big difficulty between the coastal highway management plan and the land use plan has always been that Caltrans, and this is true of other agencies, state, federal agencies, have governing vision documents, all of which appear to rest on the idea of we're gonna build, or we're gonna increase, or we're gonna grow our way out of the problem. The LCP and Big Sur, uniquely among other documents of its type in this state, as far as I know, describes build out that says we're not gonna build our way out of this. We're not gonna increase and grow our way out of our issues. And so with that fundamental difference, I think it makes it super important that we understand the level at which we're gonna have to look at the fundamentals of how we manage this unique place. I mean, I know the word unique gets bandied about a lot. This is a proper, accurate discussion of it being unique. And so with that in mind, I really appreciate the discussion about vision and goals, bringing in the issues I think that John raises. He's got public access concerns at his park. He wants people to go to the park. The Coastal Commission continues to remind us that coastal access should be for everybody, not just for rich people. How are we gonna do that? All those things are true and are important, but to set them in the context of a plan that says we can't develop, build, increase, grow our way out of it, is different. And it's gonna call for a kind of creativity that will really stretch your new young people and have them engage with ideas of sustainability that may be very much different from what they've done before, or what might be applicable elsewhere. So I think it's a huge opportunity to do something new, and I think it's the kind of new that the world's gonna be looking for. So it's a chance to set a path for the future in a lot of other ways, but it's really important that we start at the beginning, continuing to stress this. We aren't gonna make more parking areas to do this. That's not how it's gonna work. We're not gonna widen the highway to do this. That's not how it's gonna work. We're not gonna build, grow, and increase our intensity out of it that way. We're gonna have to think of other ways to make that happen. That's just my story, John.
When I started with Caltrans, it was at the very tail end of the development of this product, this CHMP. And then I've got to live with it and be with you all since then, as we've implemented the different subsequent plans like the destination stewardship plan. I see that Supervisor McDaniel is online, our transportation demand management plan, and those things speak to what you just mentioned, that, you know, since the reality of expansion is not there, we know that the reality is the visitation is there. So how do we manage all that demand? And that's going to be a really important refinement in this update, and also making and continue, like Brandy mentioned, continue to look around and see what other policies and plans are there to make sure there's consistency. Make sure that if any sort of conflict is identified, then is there opportunity to work through that and to resolve it. So it's this has been our living document for many years. It's been very successful. It's brought us all here together in this body, and you know, we're still a relatively young group. I mean, although we've been at it for 5 or 6 years, we're still a relatively young group, but this is a real launching point. And just to kind of amplify what Brandy was saying earlier about the value of these working groups, these community groups, these steering committees, and wanting to hear, you know, you even talked about a survey, you know, that's something that's going to get developed. We're going to develop a special website, like a web portal, essentially, to be able to interact and to hear ongoing. This is we're very transparent here. This is going to be a very open process. But this is my appeal now. We really need everyone to be into this for the long haul. But we're going all in, and we really appealing to the community and to the group to be into it as well.
And I also,
Is the process of this?
okay, so, we anticipate it's gonna take a few years. So we're looking at a 3 to 4 year time frame to develop this plan. So this isn't gonna happen overnight. We have a lot of moving pieces related to this. But I do want to kind of talk a little bit about what both John and Martha kind of touched on, was that I think one of the biggest changes just within Caltrans in the last 6 months to a year has been, we look at conventional highways, and not every conventional highway is the same. So a conventional highway going through the Highway 25, going over by the Pinnacles, is very different from a conventional highway on the Big Sur coast. And so we need to look at this highway from the standpoint as if it's a winding mountain road. And so design guidelines that are related to design speeds, all of the different factors related to a roadway system like on the Big Sur coast will be very different than what you'll see in other conventional highway scenarios. And so, so that mind shift will probably come out through design guidelines as we update the Big Sur management plan. Because I think the previous plan looked at that, but not quite to the scale that we're looking at it now. Because it really was, we were able to look at, we're not going to straighten out every curve. It's just not possible. So those are the kinds of design features that, as we update the design guidelines, I think we have a really open-minded group of designers that are going to help us craft what those guidelines are going to be and help us kind of craft how the community sees themselves as it relates to that.
Thank you. And I'm just going to weigh in again and say, it's all in there. It's just a question that we've seen over time, that as generations of people in different agencies change, then each group has to go back and address history that they weren't present for. So I really think that the things you talked about are in the Coast Highways Management Plan and the Land Use Plan now. So as guiding documents, we can definitely know that we might not have been as clear as we ought to have been, because I didn't carry through. All right, anybody else on the panel? Seeing that, I'm gonna go to the room. Anybody in the room?
Yes,
Say.
guess what, Martha?
Anybody besides me?
Why, sorry.
Marcus would like to speak for a change. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it really is important to, to educate the new people, the younger people in all these agencies, state parks, Caltrans, about the land use plan. And a lot of what I see happening with congestion on this highway is because really the main objective of the land use plan is not being followed. And a lot of the policies with increased recreational development, which is limited in the plan, and visual access, which the Coastal Commission forgot that they certified in the plan, because it's really trying to make recreational scenic driving enjoyable and the main priority of visitors that they serve. We're steering away with that with destination areas along the highway that has its limitations, which institutional knowledge and people that drafted the land use plan really took that into consideration, which seems to not be so much anymore. I've been geeking out actually on this. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's the Big Sur Coast Transportation Highway 1 draft report. It was done by the Monterey County Planning Commission, funded by the Coastal Commission in 1979 in order to come up with policies in the land use plan. It's a really interesting document. It talks in 1979, it talks about during peak periods being over its carrying capacity almost 50 years ago. And it has some pretty radical ideas when we get to a certain point, which I believe we're getting to. I've been saying we're kind of getting to this breaking point on this highway, which is only going to get worse. So we really need to take that into consideration. Number one scenic recreational drive in the world, we're in trouble. Like moving into the future, but if you could pull up this document and also, you know, people get familiar with it, and there's some pretty radical ideas, you know, moving into the future, and it's good to have knowledge of it and what they did and carry. That's like carrying capacity statistics, and it was a huge study that you did.
Thank you, Marcus. We posted it on the Coast Highway, on the, Big Sur Byway website as a resource if you want to look that up. Anybody else on the room want to talk? Ryland? Yeah.
Thank you all. Just wanted to say a few things. One, well, first of all, for those of you who may not know me, my name is Braylon Ammon. I'm a coastal planner at the commission. I cover Big Sur for all things not Caltrans, but here I'm stepping in for Eric Stevens, who's our Caltrans program manager. And we'll be bringing on a new Central Coast Caltrans planner as well to backfill that position. So hopefully they will be kind of the from our agency on this process. We're really interested in being involved here and appreciate the opportunity to kick this off here. A couple of things. One thing that we're interested in going forward is the relationship of the highway management plan and the LCP. As you may know, the highway management plan is not incorporated into the LCP in any way. These are two different documents right now. And so it will be interesting to see kind of how we can marry or otherwise incorporate the Coast Highway Management Plan into the LCP. I think that could make things much more clear from a design standpoint. Because the LCP is the standard of review for Caltrans projects that need to get permits. And so having a certified Coast Highway management plan or policies from it in the LCP could be very helpful in terms of just making it very clear, how projects should be designed and then getting permits for those projects. That kind of approach was successful in Marin along a stretch of Highway 1 that is somewhat similar to Big Sur, 2 lanes, rural areas, mountainous, hazardous coastline, where there's this history of consistent appeals of Caltrans projects from commission, from third parties, a lot of aesthetic concerns. I think about a decade ago, I don't know the exact timeline, the commission certified a set of LCP policies that kind of set certain design standards, and basically those issues were solved. And so that's something that we are seeing as a model here. Another thing I just wanted to briefly mention is there are kind of these other parallel processes, the Big Sur LEP update, but also, we've talked about doing community vetted public access improvement menus for future Caltrans projects. That's a condition of the Mud Creek project, I believe. And so that could be a good process to incorporate into this planning process so that, we can memorialize those. And anyway, I think that's pretty much all I have for now. But yeah, just excited to be here and be part of the process.
Thank you, and thank you, Eric, as well. We look forward to meeting the new person. Any over there? All right, let's go online, and then we have some hands up online, Katie.
Colin, I'm gonna have you unmute.
Give her a microphone back. We need more microphone. I'm gonna talk to you, bud.
Oh, no, wait.
Hi there. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
My name is Colin Gallagher, and I'm basically I'm speaking here just in my own personal capacity, but also as a member of Stop It, which is basically a small little group that's responding to Park It and some similar initiatives. But I just want to comment briefly on my own general experience. I served for years as a planner for the County of Monterey. And I also served as a by invitation as a planning commissioner for the city of Marina and for a brief time as a planner for the city of Monterey. And I did some local government work for the city of Salinas as well, the city manager's office there. So I have quite a bit of experience in the local government sphere around here, and I did probably more coastal government work, coastal land use planning work than most people have done anywhere around here. And I say that with accuracy. And the reason I mention it is because I also live around here, and people have asked me about my points of view on the Parkett project and land use plan issues and what I think about this. And they've said, well, why would you say this if you live around here? And I'm like, because I think that everybody should be able to access the coast. And I think that the existing land use plan policies up and down the coast and the land use plans and the coastal implementation plan should remain the way they are. And I know there is an effort afoot not only to change and restrict public access by Parkett and by the state parks and in regards to Parkett, but also on the part of people who are advancing their own efforts to try to change and restrict public access through eventual amendments to the coastal plans. And I do not wish for any of that to happen. And I know that there will be changes to some limited elements of the coastal plans, but I do not believe that it is consistent with the Coastal Act or with people's prescriptive rights in California or with the intent of the way the plans were developed, and as they have been honored over the years, and as they're now adopted by the county, to continue to honor our public access for people that have been enjoying coastal access over the years. It is not the intent of the Coastal Act or of the land use plans to simply turn this over to groups that will limit people's access and then only allow people to be admitted to certain access waypoints who can pay a certain fee or who will access them through buses and deny other people these certain abilities. The parks and the public lands are for all people to access. And I think this is important for us to get out here and for us to continue to emphasize, because all these discussions that you're having over years, they end up coming back to this point. And I appreciate you hearing me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Next, Katie.
We have a comment in the Q&A section. Can Caltrans give an update on the speed limit changes on Highway 1, especially at Sobranes? And another comment saying, also, can someone provide an update on the proposed bridge rails? Has Caltrans' latest proposal of railings been accepted?
Those will be, those are not on this particular agenda item, so that we'll talk about it later and have the opportunity to do so. Anybody else? Any other hands up? No, yes, maybe?
No additional hands on Zoom.
Okay, there is not any forward, so, Rachel.
Thank you, Sarah. Rachel Goldberger, Program Manager for the Community Association of Big Sur. These topics have been brought up at previous Big Sur Byways org meetings. I just wanted to state for the record that the Community Association of Big Sur is stoked that this is happening. And we are looking forward to seeing more measured results of potentially repeated traffic studies, particularly along highway hotspots or pinch points where highway visitation is potentially a health and safety issue. We would love to see continued monitoring of said areas. Hopefully not just one traffic study being done at the beginning of this plan, but throughout or every few years. We are also really excited about how much work was done to highlight the importance of following along with the corridor aesthetics and all of the details outlined in the Big Sur land use plan. There is a lot of consistency between the land use plan and the coast highway management plan, and that is really important to our community.
So I just wanted to underscore what Martha had mentioned in terms of when we're looking at this area, we're looking at increased visitation, that doesn't necessarily mean we're gonna widen highways to be able to add lanes, that's just not a possibility. So really falling in line with those corridor aesthetics, while also trying to mitigate and manage and understand how our increased visitation has an impact on our coasts is really important. And I think that learning more, observing, keeping an eye on that is going to get us to that level and keep us in a place where we're not continuing to figure out how do we grow to meet the demand. Also, I really appreciate the extra emphasis on invasive species management and mitigation. And while I saw in this current plan that there's an entire 70-page document dedicated to vegetation, I didn't really see like active strategy for ongoing management. There are just like general clauses about it, and I know that each site is going to be specific, but I would love to see in the implementation phase something a little bit more concrete in terms of monitoring. I mean, we're looking at a landslide from 1983 is covered in pampas grass. And that was one of the things that spurred the creation of this document. So I think that's all I have, but yeah, the continued monitoring of for safety, highway safety around the hotspots was one of the big things that I highlighted. And long-term invasive species mitigation things. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Anybody else?
I just want 10 seconds, one little point.
I'm counting.
You know, the Coastal Act gets brought up a lot for public access and, all for public access, but there's also a lot of public safety aspects of the Coastal Act. Health and safety, and when you have these coastal access areas that are actually causing a major public safety issue and people are actually getting run over and killed. So you also have to think about public safety along with the public access and the coastal.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, I think what is it? That's very true, but you did go over, I would say that. Yes, I think we all agree that public access means public access and staying alive in this town. So, we'll certainly count that. I'm not seeing any other hands up out in the audience. No final hands on Zoom. I'm going to come back to the panel here, and before we hand it over to Brandy and John, to suggest a couple of things is that when you're looking at baseline, the earlier we can collect baseline information, the more it will inform our process. And the two things that I think would be particularly important for baseline are peak and non-peak load understanding, and more of an exploration of the hotspot choke points, heavy use areas, limiting factors on highway transit. And one of the things I would suggest is that the information from cabs is just amazing. It really opened my eyes about how the flow and patterns of traffic work. And so looking at that as a model for how to get that kind of information, I would strongly recommend and see where we can strategically use that and other information that may or may not become available. If you've got some other hopes for some traffic counters in that baseline or early on would be great. The other thing I would like to really like to see is if we could find somebody competent with video to go up and down all of the places on the highway they can get to, both on a quiet day and during one of the peak period use and video. Because we talk about aesthetics, but there's nothing like seeing aesthetics. And so if we could get those kinds of pieces of information into a baseline study, I think it truly inform how we go forward rather than waving our arms. So I know we all have our own little videos, but none of us is able to capture the whole picture like a professional might. It might be worth funding something like that to get it done right. So just two thoughts I had, and as well as really appreciating everybody bringing their points forward.
So I heard a couple things about traffic studies. That's definitely going to be part. You mentioned the baseline. We need to talk a little bit more about baseline data because you have, your typical AM, PM peak, which is associated more with, residents that live here and that sort of thing, which, is not tourism peak, which is totally different, totally separate. And so,
Are you looking at the data that we have from CAPS?
yeah, And so that's just one of the data sources. One of the things that, I started to get excited when you said video, because I thought you were gonna go that way, the traffic data, but we do have, we do take video for, hotspot areas. We use my vision. And so we're gonna be, you know, we can go a little deeper, and it usually is cameras that we set up over a week-long period so that we can, and then we have an AI thing that kind of counts everything and gives us the information. And so we'll definitely have that from a traffic perspective. I think that it'd be interesting what you were talking about with, video data for aesthetics, so we'll definitely take that back. Public safety is gonna be a big, discussion topic for this, because we do have access issues. We want to make sure that, you know, as people are trying to access, from the highway, that they're doing it in a safe manner. Also, you know, from a complete street standpoint, there's things that we want to talk about, as well. So those are sections of the CHMP that we're all gonna put some more emphasis on, I think, then, and so that's something that we're definitely taking a look at. I think one of the things we don't necessarily want to do is go out and collect a bunch of data that, we may already have some of it readily available. So we'll be coordinating with a lot of the agencies on that. I think, a lot of the visitor data that state parks have is going to be super helpful. But we can also get a lot of that visitor data as well from other sources. And so those are all going to help us kind of start to develop what that baseline is. And then, the baseline as it relates to land use as well. So we've talked a lot about, you know, the land use, that the county has for this area and what the expectations are there. So we want to make sure that, whatever we're projecting out to be the future is consistent with what the county has, projected. And that is really, you know, we want to make sure that they're really the land use authority when it comes to that. You guys have all, you know, contributed into not only their general plan, but the LCP and the LUP. And so we want to make sure that that is part of the baseline component as well for, not only existing, but future. So we will, continue to coordinate on that effort as well, so that we're not kind of going off the rails as far as like inconsistency with other efforts. Another big piece of that is on the transit side of the house and what the long-term plans are for transit in Monterey County, in particular on the Big Sur Coast, and what, how that feeds into other pieces like the parket and other, components. And I think that it's important to Colin's comment about equity. That's going to be critical. We don't want to create a situation where people can't access the coast. We want that to certainly be, the access to be equitable, but there are ways to set up, measures, and that's something that we need to make sure we're having a conversation about as a community, to maybe manage traffic demand on, it's just, Market is just one tool, the tool shed. You can use public transit. There's so many different tools we can use. And so it's just a matter of trying to figure out, the things from a long-term standpoint, how they would work, and making sure that we're including the transit agencies in that conversation. Because ultimately they're going to have to own and operate that themselves. And so we don't want to get too far out in front of what their long-term plans are as well. So there's a lot of collaboration that we're going to have to do in order to answer a lot of these questions. So they're all really great questions. I'm excited to continue.
This is the first time I'm going to help with my career, but I'm going to be here every step of the way until then, and bringing, you know, the knowledge of this committee that I know, and sharing all with you, and helping develop market initiative for the state parks master plan as something very positive to help manage demand in just one of the locations. And again, just making the appeal. And I don't know if we're getting close to wrap up on this, but just making the appeal of everyone's participation. And not just being here today, but going back and telling everyone you know what we're doing. And when we get our portal website set up, accessing that, we'll message that out the best that we can. Participating in the survey when that's implemented. It reminded me when the invasive species came up that on this committee, we have an invasive species subcommittee. We decided how that we're going to plan moving. So there's a lot of work, but again, there's a lot of hands going into work.
Thanks. And so, as we kind of get to the end of this, what are the next steps we should be looking for? I think people here probably got this information multiple ways, but what's the time frame for the next steps and what should we all be on the alert for?
So one of the things that I'd like to do is, there's a couple of projects that our team has been working on. I had mentioned that the different advisory groups, that we would have some of that stakeholder engagement, so the working group, that sort of thing. We're going to be sharing that information with the Byways to kind of get some first confirmation that these individual, not necessarily individuals, but these organizations or that these groups are included. And if we're missing anyone, so that we can start kind of formulating a list of potential candidates, if you will, that would be able to participate in some of these groups. The other thing that we're going to start working on is a draft charter. And so trying to start to define what each of these groups will look like. And so we'll be sharing some of that information as well. And then what we would like to do is, we do have a listing of all the planning documents. So we have a tremendous amount of information, but we want to make sure that we're not missing anything on the planning side of the house, the things that have been done over the last 20 years. And so there are a lot of efforts that other organizations have taken on. And so that's some of the information. And so those are some things that we just want to confirm with the Byways group. And then we'll be working on that scope of work and sharing that as well, so that we can start having a conversation. But what I would like to do first is really set up that technical team, that technical working group that will include folks here in the community, because the charter, the scope of work, all of those work products are things that that group is going to finalize. And also as we start to move into things like the mission and the vision and that sort of thing, we want to also make sure that we have a grouping of people that are going to help participate in that. And then we would ultimately bring those back to things like BSBO and Byways to get confirmation.
Okay, so our next meeting that we have scheduled is in March of next year, so we would expect to hear an update on your progress at that meeting. Great. And I'm just gonna, seeing nobody else, can I close this item out by reminding everyone here that it says loud and clear all over this document, the Coast Highway Management Plan is not a regulatory document. And so that's one of the things that we struggle with as going forward, is that it is a handbook for how we can expect Caltrans to address the challenges of operating up and down the Big Sur Road. But it is not, insofar as it says that right in it, a regulatory document in and of itself. So that puts it in a slightly different category than something, say, like the land use plan, which is. And also, I would also draw everyone's attention to the fact that the state tried to address that issue in, I think it's AB 4442 or something like that, which we've also posted on the Byways website, talking about adopted corridor management plans being statutorily, I guess, implementable or required in a way that defines that particular category as something that only this plan fits. So there's some interesting regulatory and legal interactions there, which goes to my final request is going forward, can we look towards a process map? Because I think that visuals for me, the maps and graphics are so helpful to know how interactions work. And there's a lot of moving parts. So thank you, Brittany. Thank you, John, for bringing this before us. And I think I speak for everybody to say it's pretty interesting. Forward to seeing what comes next. Steve.
Sarah Harvey, you can unmute.
Sarah wants to talk. Sarah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm just looking over this plan and it does look really great. And I also just want to echo what Colin had said and what some others have voiced about equitable access and inclusion. And yeah, I just wanted to echo that as an importance. The non-governmental organizations list is so extensive, and that's great to see. And my main comment would just be to make sure that during these planning stages, I'm sure plenty of these non-governmental organizations advocate for equitable access, but just to be sure that within the planning stages that some organization or voice that does advocate for the equitable access is involved in those conversations before it just comes to public comment, so that they can be involved in the actual framework of the document instead of just quick public comments afterward.
Thank you, Sarah, and I think we'll all take that to heart and agree with nodding his head, because the Coastal Commission takes that very seriously at every stage. So thank you. Dan, a final word?
I don't know if it's final, but a word. It's my experience that equitable access gets invoked a lot, often these days, for access that is not particularly equitable. It's the poet Melvin Tolson said, "Don't look at the mouth, look at the hand," that it's a way to justify all kinds of things. So I hope we'll get an update on, since we've talked about technical data, what is the actual data that goes into claims about this or that procedure that increases equitable access rather than merely development.
Okay. Take note. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities here, and I know that we have contact information for both John and Randy. So if you want to have offline conversations, I expect they're open to that. And I am going to move forward at this point because we have another item on our agenda, and then we want to be able to ask the members if they have specific comments. So we're in item D here, which is a discussion of approaches to meeting on Brandon. And it came up out of a bunch of discussions I had in different ways, brought forward this agenda item because we've talked about both the lack of transit for operational purposes and the ability of transit to provide some relief potentially for some of the congestion points while allowing people to access them. But we didn't, there's so many moving parts again, that we wanted to know if we had interest in this group and those surrounding it and bringing together potentially a separate kind of a meeting, maybe a forum or something that where we could invite the transportation agencies and others who are involved in transit per se to investigate possibilities of increasing transit opportunities here on the coast, both for residents and for visitors. And that came up tangentially as part of the discussion of potential offsite mitigation efforts that the Coastal Commission wanted to look at with respect to public access for emergency projects. So is there any way we can tie in some of all of these needs together to come up with something that actually would make sense on the ground? So this item is to open conversations of, is there a way we could, in this group, move forward a conversation that brings in people who have been working on it through the parking initiative, for example, the people who worked on Sycamore Canyon, people who worked on all different kinds of shuttles, transit, and bus service throughout the last recent times. So that's what this item's about, and I'm going to suggest that we came after the Coast Highway Management Plan update in the hope that might be a tie in there as well. But others, that's the point.
So that what you're saying, it makes me think of the analogy of there are multiple threads. The CHMP is a thread. There is a transportation and management plan. There's all these threads, but this is now the perfect time because we're tying them together. And when you tie these threads together and you pull on it, it just makes the whole row stronger. So I think to the point that this is a good topic and for future conversation, completely agree. And it's a chance to take all these efforts that there's so much, there's a lot of the study and work maybe is already done on some of these items and bringing it back up and bringing it perfect again is really important.
Yes, they're recognizing that. My question was, practically speaking, how did we think we might forward this thought? And one of the things we might consider is, as we dedicated one chunk of our meeting here to the Coast Highway Management Plan update, maybe we could talk about transit. I'm not sure we could do it justice in that sort of a setting. We don't have any way for Byways to convene a transportation meeting or something like that. So I'm looking to see if there's, do you think we should start here, or do you think we should take it to this back, what we might practically do to capitalize on this moment?
One thought, I think maybe not the best one, but maybe we can just ask our transit providers, our MST, our Parkit, those who are in business. Maybe we ask them to, form or business or whatever it is, just give us a status to talk about it. Introduce this desire to have this ongoing conversation, and then start the dialogue there, and maybe that's part of building the baseline.
The other thing that we can do is that we host quarterly transit meetings with all of our transit partners throughout the district, and that includes, you know, all the other counties, but we could certainly do something with our transit folks where we could certainly host something. That's something that Caltrans is interested in doing. If it's outside of the byways, where we could have like AMBAG and Monterey County or TAMC, as well as MST, because there is a broader base to this than just the transit agencies. A lot of the funding sometimes comes from some of the advocacy that some of these other groups do on behalf of the transit agency, and so there's opportunity sometimes to pull these groups together and see if there's any synergy that can kind of be built with bringing different folks together. And so we can certainly bring something like that up as well at our upcoming district quarterly. I think it's actually early December, and see if there's a interest in that. And we could coordinate. And Mark, if you wanted to have a representative there, we can certainly invite you or someone from the byways that would want to speak to that. We usually host up virtually, but that's something where we can at least start a dialogue. And because we bring those groups together on a pretty frequent basis.
Cool. I think it's one side of the house, but then we have a lot of other, around here, we've got private efforts as well that probably have not been folded in yet. So it would be nice to get everybody on the same page as we're, cool. I would definitely like to know more about that, and I think we might find some other folks here who are interested as we go forward. Panelists, anybody in the room? Anybody? Yeah. I'm not in the room.
You're not giving that up. Thank you, everyone. My name is Stephanie Gametto. I'm with Parkit. I'm the project director. And I love this idea of bringing all the transportation agencies together. We would love to be a part of that conversation. I think it would be a really wonderful room to brainstorm solutions and get some people together who could put together some solutions that are collaborative for this area. So please include me in that.
Thanks, we'll make it up. Also, I would add that I see an awful lot of private tour operators up and down this coast. A lot of them. People in vehicles, people in vans, people doing all kinds of activities like bike tours, those kinds of things, wine tours, people that are coming for events. There's a lot of folks who are driving shuttles at one time or another up and down the coast. And we'd like to suggest that folding in those as resources might be better than folding them in and keeping the president in trouble. This is sort of one side of the other. Anybody else in the room?
I think it's a great idea, and I think this topic, this forum that we're talking about might be bigger than would be appropriate for a BizMac. However, I think it might be a good place to start, or at least in parallel include BizMac in this discussion, mostly so that our elected officials are aware and because they're going to have certainly a say and influence and impact on how this would proceed. So I think it's important to include them.
Thank you. I'll put on my list of things to report back to this next one. Byways, if anybody stays till the end. Yeah. Sarah's tired, so you get.
Kate, yeah. Half for Katie.
Thank you. I just have a question about, we had Monterey City's transit down here for many years, and there was very little usage by the public of that resource. And So how much effort we're going to spend in the bus services where in an area like Big Sur where you kind of need a vehicle to get to the destination that you're going to go to a hike and for however long. And then to come back only to have to wait for a transit for a long period of time. This doesn't make sense down here. It's too difficult. So what is the goal, I guess, of the larger meeting to bring transit to Big Sur past what it's already done in the past?
My own personal answer to this, and this is nobody but me, is that transit wasn't appropriate to the need here. So we need to rethink the whole idea of how transit is to be helpful in this setting that we're in. That's why we need a summit. I mean, we know from collecting data that the average time people spend at Bixby is 9 minutes, I think, mostly. So if there were shuttles that went by that every 15 minutes, every half hour, that were small, you could fill them up and take people down and bring them up for that need. We know that we have a lot of people who work in the Big Sur Valley who might take shuttles at hospitality workers start 0 dark 30. That might be a time when we need more transit, and that might be geared towards the specific need of that constituency group. We might need people who are going on hikes that need us to stop at various ends of trails didn't have on the list before. And all those things together need to be looked at as a package and see who can provide what part of it. So maybe you come down on MST and then there's a shuttle that does the various commercial stops in the Big Sur Valley. Maybe those are two different things that are coordinated, but that's why I'm so excited about the idea of trying to get all sorts of different people who deal with transportation into the same room to see if we can come up with some of these ideas where different people could provide different parts of it.
Trey is right. What was used before didn't work, and Martha is right as to why. And if this is going to be something that works, it has to be much broader than what we've tried in the past. And if we can do that, I think it could be transformative. And Martha talked about hospitality workers, and there are literally hundreds of vehicles on this highway every day making a round trip from the peninsula to Big Sur Valley and back home at night at a variety of times during the day. And so, that alone, if there could be a solution to that, it would make a noticeable difference in what we see. And so, getting everyone at the table to talk about what is possible, what is not, and what impact that might have on what's happening today, I think is a great place to start.
Yeah, we're so strapped with what to do with the choke points that anything that might help bring somebody down to go to the beach, and then they know they'll have another shuttle to take them back. Come down, go to the restaurant, drink a glass of wine or two and drive a shuttle, ride the shuttle back. I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of things that, to Trey's point, an occasional bus that runs at a given time is not relevant. And of course, it doesn't pencil out from the transportation agency standpoint because ridership per mile is the metric and no rural route can really measure up to that, even if it is heavily used. So one little one isn't useful, isn't important, doesn't address any of our needs. Hence the hope that we can bring everybody together and look at ways we might be able to access funding sources that people hadn't thought about. Byways may have some things that they could look at to bring something to the table. So it might be that MSD itself doesn't have ability to do that, but if you got a grant from somebody else to do something else, maybe you could, something like that. The hope would be that it wouldn't just be a little trickle, but that an actual, as Rick says, a transformative approach to providing the kind of transportation that people want.
If we do this, could we take on issues outside of just the idea of a shuttle? For example, a couple of examples. There are a number of startups right now working on flying cars. So supposedly our future is that in the near future, we'll see flying cars. I don't know how that impacts our area, but they're coming, supposedly. I don't know if that's something we could factor in and look at ahead of time before that day arrives, but it's probably, I just wondered if we could talk about that possibility. I've also heard the possibility, proposed before, total out of the box thinking of what if we did an odd even license plate approach to traffic in Big Sur, where you wouldn't have a guard gate, you just tell the public it's odd even days, they're the odd even days with license plates in Big Sur, and then let the public decide if they're going to observe that or not. So that's out of the box thinking, but it has to do with transportation, and I wonder if we could include that in the discussion.
Thank you. Is there anybody online that I'm missing?
No, it was a Zoom notification.
Okay. The Zoom was just squeaking. Thank you. I would advocate that we don't rule anything out at the beginning of any conversation of this sort. Katie?
Sarah has her hand raised.
Sarah has her hand raised. Sarah?
Sorry, I keep on raising my hand just after you check. Um, just another idea that I had that including the business owners to see if there's even a possible coordination effort for when shifts begin, if there's going to be like a separate sort of hospitality worker shuttle or one that's geared specifically for that. I don't know if they currently coordinate anything like that, but that could greatly improve the likelihood of people using that transportation if there's a little bit more coordinated like shift timings between all the businesses. It might be able to make it more streamlined. So just wanted to share that idea.
Yes, exactly. That's why we need to get all these voices in the same darn room. That Sam Farley's just talked about his job in local situations was to take all the people who were remotely involved, put them in a room and throw sandwiches through the transom until they came out with a plan. And it's kind of always informed me about how it is that when people get together, you get some results you didn't expect. You can only provide the way that it can happen. You can't tell what the outcome is gonna be. So, taking that away, do we have any other hands up on Zoom, Kate?
No.
All right, so taking away from that, what I would like to suggest is that we work with you, Brandy, to see if we can find a way to leverage your existing meetings into something that would be more inclusive and focused on the Big Sur corridor. And I will be glad to talk with you and John about that. And we can, what is the next BISMAC, Katie?
The next BISMAX dates are not finalized yet. We were waiting for the house
Next
calendar.
year?
Yes, in 2026.
Due in February?
Usually, yes.
By that time, we would be able to say whether we had any further results than just a conversation. And certainly we would fold everybody in the meantime, then there may be a lot of informal conversations that would go on about something like this as well. And Stephanie, definitely hope that you'd be willing to participate in those, as I know Cabs will, because they're always will. I don't know how they find the time. All right, thank you all so much for indulging me on that. I have a vision and it's just hard to get away from a vision. We've, as usual, gone long, but I'm gonna just move forward to ask members, if you have a particular thing you'd like to highlight at this point, now is your moment. Forest Service have anything they want to say? Pass it down there and everybody can go around.
Yeah, no specific updates or report from the Forest Service, just that we survived the great government shutdown. We're getting staff back, we're starting to get back on track. There's one little connection thread to the Coast Highway Management Plans, our recent document, our visitor use management strategy, addressing vegetation, recreation, camping, etc. Community collaboration. So that's available online. Smart Graves National Forest, Smart Major District Use Management Plan. So that would be considered along with that. That's all I got. Thanks.
Yeah, a few updates for state parks. Obviously, we've been very busy since our last meeting, wrapping up the summer season, but specific to the Byways purview, and mid-October, we Completed a prescribed burn at Andrew Malera State Park in collaboration with local and partner agencies. So that was a success. I believe it was total up to 32 acres. So another tactic and avenue for dealing with invasive species and habitat improvement. Just want to highlight that. For Garrett Potter restrooms, it's been a topic that pops up every once in a while. Just an update on that. We're currently going through a contract amendment with our design staff and the consultants that we have on for that project. So there haven't been a lot of developments since prior updates, prior meetings. But once that project gets moving along, then I'll be sure to provide an update. As always, we have email addresses that people can reach out to, and always reach out to me as well. Last update is this: whenever we're in this meeting space, just want to thank the Big Sur Lodge for hosting us. It's always a great resource for everybody in the community to come together and facilitate this. Thank you.
Okay.
So my final comment, I just want to echo the gentleman's comments that, it's not unusual that a highly touristed area like ours has to have these kinds of discussions. They go on in highly touristed areas around the world. It's also not unusual that I live right at the entrance to Big Sur, near El Paso Creek and Yankee Point. It's not unusual for me to see Coast Guard helicopters flying by looking for people in the water. That's not unusual. It's not unusual for me to drive by Point Lobos and someone steps out on Highway 1, puts their hand, stops traffic so they can back out. These are unsafe conditions. And I think whatever we do, whatever decisions we make, we always have to defer to safety. I know coastal access is important. We all want it for everybody, but we always have to defer to safety, to your comment. And I think we have some work to do there. So that's my home.
Rick has nothing to say? Rick has nothing to say. I wish I could go in the middle. Very quickly from the mid-coast, I was contacted recently by one of our residents immediately after this most recent tragedy at Garrett Beach. And once again, as we did in the 90s and in the 2000s, the request was made that we provide some more radical signage at the beach, like with monastery, that follows some of the patterns that were suggested from Hawaii. The number of, and the names and the dates of the people we've lost in this area, so that we are not just posting a sign that says this is dangerous, but we're posting a sign that says so-and-so was lost on this date. And as I remember one from Hawaii, it says he was a good swimmer, or swept from the cliff, or taken out by a wave, or knocked out by a cave that fell on them. But some sort of more graphic recognition in these areas, and Garrett is definitely one of them, as is Mortuary Beach, as I like to call it when I was growing up, where people from out of town don't really know how dangerous it is and how to make that viscerally real. And so the request was, could we ask state parks to look into some of the models in Hawaii that address this kind of drama, and see if there's a way to use that to help inform some of the people that should not be lost to us for these kinds of things, but they just didn't know. As I think everybody here knows, when you have a community that has a small number of people, and 85% of the people you see have come in for the first time or darn near, you can't educate your way out of the problem long term. You've got to have a point of contact, education, method sufficient to the threat. And this was, to me, really a good reminder that we tried this before, we never got very far. Maybe now is the time to carry it forward and look at on-site strategic messaging that is way more dramatic than we've had today. So that was the only thing that was brought up, except for a thank you for some clarification around speed signs. With respect to the work zones, I got a couple people say thanks. We got a little better, but you all know not entirely.
At the last, both Bismack and Byways, we brought up the topic of the bridge rails. And we're even able to show some characterizations of what a potential bridge rail would look like. And we are working, and we're gonna be able to deliver some visualizations related to that, including a drive-by visualization. So all that to say, we have an existing bridge rail subcommittee. And our commitment at the last two meetings was to start presenting some of those findings. So I'd like to see about maybe reconvening our subcommittee on that, or some version of, or whatever, I don't even recall who was on it anymore. But basically having the opportunity to carry forward this conversation as we promised, to start demonstrating that, because it would be our hope that if this is, we can get some traction behind it, and we still have a very important need, and that's replacing our server, that are in poor repair. So please, you might see an invitation for something like that, but do us on the committee to have a conversation in the next month to month and a half to, we hate to go much past January, because we have some good momentum with that and like to start collaborating.
Yeah.
I guess, oh yeah, thank you. I guess as a brief Regents update, prior to the storms of this last week, progress was going really, really well. And of course, with the storms, we had to pull back, and what's left there now is a muddy mess. But what also was left behind was some stability. So some of the measures of implementing, like those steel rods we talked about, the shear dowels going in, those have proved to be successful. We made some contours to the work area to allow for water flow, and those measures have proved successful. So just want to report that we're glad for that. Our contractors let us know they want to work through Thanksgiving. So there's a lot of motivation, and so there could be opportunity with maybe reevaluating the schedule again. No announcement or no target per se, but just to mention that things are going there really well, and as things unfold and we're able to mention, we'll be able to do that.
Yeah.
Just a quick note, we developed plans to respond to the various tragedies along the coast. I think it'd be good to poll the first responders who actually are on the scenes, sheriff's office, state parks is almost always there, the local fire departments, and get the insights of the people who are there.
Okay, Sarah? South Coast got anything on its mind?
No. No, I can hear you. No, nothing pressing that comes to mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie, do we have anything from the admin side?
No.
That was very conclusive. We haven't talked with C. Monterey today, although we know their representative is attending remotely. Anything from you? Want to bring forward here? Not seeing hands or comments, and I can't read that far. Nothing? Okay, is there anybody in the audience that has something they want to share quickly before we conclude? No? Well, thank you all for coming. I hope you will help us spread the word, because this is a bigger issue than the people you see here. Dan wants to talk now.
Yeah.
You're done.
Okay, Dan, do we have a microphone?
I did have a question for the state parks, which was in the update. On the west side at Lobos, there are some kind of construction indications along where the trails along the road. There were, at least there were last time I went, that are places where people have to go back into the shoulder of the road or into the road. Can you give an update on that?
Yes, the area that along the Highway 1 corridor that's on west side of the highway, the public uses to access Logos from highway parking. That was the project to remove vegetation along that corridor. A handful of different agencies were involved in that. That was not a trail project, and we're currently assessing that culvert situation and it's a handful of utilities that go through there, so that's the reason for that option.
Really quick shut it down before we have one conversation on the record, which is not to in any way trying to inhibit those that have been among the people who have made the trip or otherwise. And thank you all for coming in again, urging you to try to spread the word that the CHMP update process will be important. And also follow the other things we talked about. This is a place where we talk about stuff like that. Like people to participate. Thank you very much, and I'm gonna adjourn the meeting, whatever it is now.
Thank you, everyone.
Sure, thank you a lot, so I didn't do that, but I did think.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Perfect.